This time around on Author's Corner, so pleased to be joined by Larry Bachman. The name of his book is Where Are You Going? It's about choice, and he joins us here on America Tonight with me, Kate Delaney, to talk about the book. He and I had a great off-air conversation. He talked about growing up in a cultural bubble, and he talked about having a matriarchal upbringing, and then how that shaped him and pushed him forward, and just incredible experiences too that we'll get into. So Larry, thanks for coming on.
Oh, you're quite welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
So first of all, let's talk about your upbringing as I set that up. What was your upbringing like when you say you were in a cultural bubble? Paint that picture for everybody.
Well, it was a farm community pretty predominantly, and cultural bubble, we were just about 100% white German community, farm community, and it was different from future experiences, which I thought there's a whole new brave world out there, and I couldn't wait as I became into my teens and and became a musician. I couldn't wait to get out of that community. So, but the matriarchal side of it gave me a faith-based upbringing, and that, I think, really set the foundation for my future, because I like to say sometimes, but here, by the grace of God, go we. And through my whole life, and a very circuitous coming in and out of being a musician, and it just, that foundation brought me through. I felt like the Lord was always on my side if I would allow him to be. And because sometimes he taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, what about me? But as you go through life, you're so into what's happening that you say, okay, Lord, well, I'll get back to you on that, but the foundation was there. And I just got to say, thank God for that.
And it's so much in your book. It's deeply rooted in your book. And what is so fascinating, you're being so modest about the musical side of you, because you were an incredible musician. I mean, you could have tried out for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. So that says something. And I think that's what you're talking about. You were around musicians where, hey, we know what happens on the road. We know what can happen. And you stopped yourself from going down that path.
Right. Yeah, there's a saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Well, as a musician, what happens on the road stays on the road. And exactly what you just said, and I just thank God that I'm, I have a birthday coming up. I'll be 74 years old. And to pass through all that life, and it truly is the rock and roll life. And then coming back out of that, I was mentored by a good friend, and he was an attorney there in the small town where I grew up, and he mentored me into the newspaper business. And later I bought that newspaper, and I had the newspaper for about 6 years when I sold it out. But the thing was that's what gave me the foundation to become taking a different road, and getting into an entrepreneurship and just trying to make a different life away from that rock and roll, and it was such a gift of this man who mentored me, and his name was Irving Graybill, and he had the Post newspaper in the community where I grew up, and he mentored me and gave me a whole new life, and that's the reason, that's where I got into writing, because you have to do the captions, you have to do the stories and all that. And God gave me a gift. And amen. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, and it's like I said, you missed out on the, you had the peer pressure that would be there because of the drugs and the culture. I mean, at one point, John Lennon, you were supposed to meet him, but he was shot, so you didn't meet him, which is so shocking, Larry, to think of that, because who knows what would have come of even that meeting, right?
Right. And it's so incredible to have been actually in New York City waiting to meet him. And then I get the message that says, well, I guess you're not going to get to meet Mr. Lennon. And I thought they were full of it. They were just putting me off. And then he says, no one will ever meet John Lennon again because he's dead. And to be there at that moment and hear it come on WABC radio, even knowing that happened before you would even hear it on the news. It's just, there's just been so many things in my life that just blows my mind at this point.
Absolutely shocking. Let's talk about the book. In the book, the story is some of what we're talking about is wrestling with a few things, the complexities of right and wrong, friends, what's happening there, this tale of resilience and growth. And I think there's a lot that young readers can take from this. Tell us more about Where Are You Going? It's about choice.
Well, it's a book that tells about my life growing up in that little community. And it's the friends around that area. My dad had actually built us a baseball field to give us something to do as kids. And the difference in the lifestyle from then until now, you have such a breakdown of the foundation of family. And in the book, it tells about sitting around the dinner table, discussing things. The fact that my dad built this baseball field, and the community, as kids, we had a place to play, and there was only about 25 to maybe 35 families in this little village called Kissimmee. And it was a great life experience, such a foundation of family and friendship. And today it has become, I think our lives have become so abstract because we don't take the time to sit down to a family meal. And even if we sit down to a family meal, everybody's on the phone texting somebody else. There's no conversation. And it's kind of weird, you take your, for instance, you take your girlfriend out to dinner, and you don't have any conversation because you're both there with the thumbs going wild on the phone. And it's just the same with the kids nowadays. A child who is like 6, 7 years old already knows how to use the telephone, the cell phone, probably even better than I do. But that's what I'm saying, that this book shows a lifestyle so much different from it is today. And I think that it's a welcome story to see how things were back then, because as kids, we would get off the school bus and we didn't want to be inside. We wanted to be outside doing things, running, playing baseball, playing tag or whatever, but just mixing it up with the neighborhood children. And back in those days, we didn't even lock our doors,
Yeah.
And so that's the difference between then and now. And that's what this book is. It's about what happened back then, how people lived back then, and how there was more of a sense of community, more of a sense of the foundation of family. And it breaks my heart today to see how abstract we have become from each other, from community. It's always, the story is always about, oh, it's happening way over there to them. That doesn't affect me. It's sort of like even the storm that came through, Burl. Here I am on the outer fringes of the bands of the storm. You get down in Houston, they're getting hammered. High water and people dying and, trees falling in on a person's house. Well, then I can just flippantly, I could say, well, that's happening there. That's not happening to me. And we have lost a sense of community. And it's about loving thy neighbor. And it's about, I just can't put into words how it affects me personally and in my heart to see the differences, because back then the sense of community where you would help your neighbor, you would make a loaf of bread for somebody or bake a pie, and you'd walk across the street and you'd say, here's a gift. Now today, you hardly even know who your neighbor is. And nobody wants to talk to you. We had lived in the city of Arlington. We didn't know who our neighbors were. You had to actually go physically, step out your door, walk next door, knock on the door and say, hi, we just moved in. And they just sort of look at you, oh, okay. And it's just, we have lost our sense of civility, I think.
Yeah, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a strong part of your book, and that's one of the takeaways, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's about, getting into trouble. We would be camping out and my dad said, look, you don't take your bikes, you don't go on the road. No. You got to stay right here. But we as kids, guess what? We got hopped on our bikes. We had taped flashlights to our bikes and we went on the main road. We went places we shouldn't have been. And my dad, the next morning, he knew what we were up to. And anyway, there was penalties for disobedience.
That goes back to the community and all the things that you're talking about here. You can get the book on Barnes & Noble. You can learn more about Larry. He's got several other books, authorlarrybachman.com. That's the website. Larry, thanks for coming on.
Oh, you're quite welcome. It's a pleasure to speak to you and be a part of you as well.